Hello, everyone. This is John Savage with Unwind Financial here again today. Just wanted to go over some tips with you. And one's just going to be brief and it's going to be talking about insurance. So I was reading an article actually yesterday on Yahoo. So someone had a tree, a particular tree that was right there leaning over their home on their property, right next to the property. Well, as many of you I'm sure know, some of you may have experienced, that can be not only a hazard, but just a high risk in general. And in terms of being covered, it was not going to be covered as I was reading this article. And so the homeowner had reached out to the insurance company. They gave them an ultimatum: either cut the tree down or we're canceling your insurance. And the insurance company will give you so much time. They're not going to just cancel it. They can't just cancel it all of a sudden, just, hey, we're canceling if you don't do it in 24 hours. Obviously, you need more time than that. You're dealing with a major asset, if you will, responsibility, which can become a major liability if it's not handled properly and insured and covered properly. So the individual, after going back and forth from reading the article, the insurance company wasn't budging. They were going to cancel their insurance. So when you run into situations like that, there's a couple of things. Or if you think you might be at the risk of that and your insurance company hasn't done like an annual audit or review, sometimes they might actually have somebody come out. Maybe you see them, maybe you don't. And with the new insurtech companies and the new technology, they can take drones and do it. They can actually have someone just review properties and have a drone sent out high up, and you never know that they're reviewing your backyard, front yard, taking pictures and doing close-ups to assess view of your policy as you have a policy renewed for the year. And many of you are getting letters saying that they're either going to drop coverage or increase your coverage. So not everybody will necessarily drop it, they'll increase it. But if you find yourself in this particular situation with the article where they were giving them an ultimatum because obviously it must have been a big tree, one of the things that the person found out is from the city, they couldn't just cut the tree down. So with the city, they told them the situation. They said they weren't going to cut the tree down. They couldn't cut it down because if you cut it down, then you're fine. Why? Because of the aesthetics and of the type of species of tree it was. There are certain oak trees or cypress trees or other trees, as well as maybe certain type of plants or vegetation that might be in a certain vicinity or locale of your property that you feel like is a nuisance or a hazard or whatever the case might be, or it could be some other liability where someone could be injured as well. So it's not just as far as a hazard and risk to your property and damage not being covered, but also, excuse me, in some cases it could be where someone could be injured. Sometimes, depending on where your property is located, because you don't own the land, but most people they don't own the land, especially in city limits or within certain county lines, um, you still have certain responsibilities that you have to adhere to in order to not be fined and have other issues with the city. So in those cases, a lot of times you can, like in different places in California, such as Sacramento, San Jose. I used to live in Sacramento, but in those locations and other counties throughout there as well nearby, you are able to go to the city and petition them, fill out an application for a permit with the reason, of course, why you need to cut that particular species down that is protected in your particular local area. And so, if you get approval, then obviously they'll tell you what you need to do, and you can start doing that. But that's one way to get around that is to get approval from the city as to why you need to have that tree cut down in this case. And keep in mind, if it is a hazard, you have young children, that maybe it's a neighborhood of children, maybe it's leaning on a power line that's connected to nearby next to a school you live by. There's all these different reasons, right? So even when you present your case to the city, where they're not going to just cut a tree down, but you can apply for a permit to get it cut down. Make sure you have all the reasoning and just basically presenting your case of the risk factors that could be involved. It could be where the city's possibly responsible as well, where there could be some negligence, right? Whether it's contributory negligence or it's just complete negligence on their part if they deny your opportunity to cut the tree down, or you can cut it down and just risk getting a fine. Find out what those are if you can afford it and you don't mind paying it, and it's just pretty much that's all it's going to be, and there's no other issues on your property. Then you could risk cutting it down if you feel like it's really a hazard to the neighborhood and children and whatnot. So you have to assess the risk overall to your neighbors, to yourself, vicinity of other properties, based on that particular hazard that you see involved. And of course, with you and your family being insured and not having coverage dropped or significantly increased due to the hazard. Sometimes insurance companies will increase something so much knowing, and this is happening right now in our country, where the policy amount has increased so much, they know people can't afford it on average. And so what do? You're going to cancel. And some people I've talked to working with EAP plans, they've actually just gone without insurance for a while. So it's like this big gaping hole that they're literally living with every time they go to bed, knowing not knowing what's going to happen, especially with any weather patterns and where they live at. So that's one thing. Petition the city for that. Two is just cutting it down, taking a risk if you can afford to pay the fine, depending on what that looks like. You just want to find out ahead of time before you make that decision, right? And then, and also that's contingent, like I said, upon whether you get approval to cut it down or not. The other thing is trying to petition the insurance company to negotiate where they will cover it, but maybe they increase your um, policy um, um, coverage, or maybe you can increase your coverage limits if you agree to pay a certain amount. That's not necessarily like they're going to do that, but again, you can always talk to an insurance company where you have certain endorsements. That's something you can do too. People don't realize if they need to have certain things covered, where maybe pests aren't covered or some other risk factor on your particular property and location. The other thing is that you can also shop around. So you can shop around and see what other insurance companies and some of these new insurtech companies popping up. I remember when I was working with one company, Hippo Insurance, when they were getting started a little bit younger a few years ago. And what was cool about them is certain areas where I did a quote working with a gentleman who was training me in property and casualty right before he retired 3 years ago. He about 4 years ago now. Anyway, he went through some of the other carriers that he had, great companies. Like there's Kemper's a great company, Travelers, there's other companies out there, Hartford, but certain companies weren't just going to take on certain risk, like in the fire lines area, even if it wasn't close to the fire line, but still it was in a nearby vicinity. Certain carriers at that time, they had a memorandum on it where they were covering certain things, a moratorium, excuse me. But in certain cases, I was actually able to get coverage under Hippo Insurance. Great company, great platform, and there are certain systems and things that they'll cover as well, electrical or like plumbing systems that won't typically be covered with a lot of policies. Now, some insurance companies, with the new ones coming out, they're finding ways to be more efficient with their costs and offer that, which is great. But you just want to look at your policy carefully and definitely look at systems, because that is an issue sometimes depending on where people live at. I've talked to more than one person over the last 24 months in different locations and cities throughout the country where the city may have had something going on, and depending on how there might have been a hill slightly, or a slight slant, they're working on the piping, and then it flowed down the hill in one case, and the lady said the city would cover certain things, but the other things they would not cover, like fixing the drywall and replacing their carpet. But they did acknowledge that it looked like it had to do with them right when they did some changes with the pipes, and there was some flooding a little bit, and it trickled down in their home, down into the basement. And so you just want to make sure certain systems are covered, just in case there's any conflict as far as where that starts with the city line and so forth. And the same thing again with these protected species and trees, things like that. You just want to know your property and assess it throughout the year. And if there's things that you haven't assessed as far as risk factors and any potential liability that could be attributed to you, if otherwise covered claim would be could come up, causation, you just want to make sure you're prepared beforehand. And that's why I also suggest too, and I've done some other videos, and I'll be doing this more as the year goes on in the future, talking about insurance reviews. That's why they're so important. Doing it at least once a year, or as often as you have any significant life events or major changes with your property or plan changes. You want to go ahead and get ahead of it so you're well equipped and prepared. But that's pretty much it until next time. If you have any other questions, you can reach out to Unwind Financial Insurance. I do financial counseling, so Unwind Financial Insurance. So my website is UWF. So it's Unwind Financial is what the UWF stands for, insurance.com. You can email me if you have questions at info@unwindfinancial.org. That's info@unwindfinancial.org. I would definitely love to gain your business. It doesn't matter if you're dealing with a high net worth property, you need to get something covered. You have some different risk factors that you need reviewed. Just give me a call, send me an email, fill out the form, and I'll be more than happy with you and assist you any way I can. Until next time, thank you so much and unwind. Have a blessed day.